No, it does not involve makeup. All right, so we were out on the field one day, and Mike Lopez did this thing where he laid down on his bass drum, rolled over on the top of it, stuck his foot straight up in the air, standing on his head. Yeah, you remember that. And you sprinted across the field at top speed, just plowed him over, and you yelled him down pretty good. I don't remember what you said. So, will you come up and tell your side of that story? You remember that?
That was it.
Yeah, the statute of limitations run out, you're not going to do That was it. I was just trying to see if there was any more to it, so that was a good story. All right.
That was trouble. That was trouble.
All right, hang on a second. So we got a couple things here. If you haven't seen this is a book full of pictures we've been pulling off of Facebook, and you guys don't do Facebook.
I got a cell phone though.
That was good. That was good. So this is off of Facebook, and people email. If you want to take a minute, write a little note in here. That's great. Let me tell you what it says on the front of it. It says, Phil and Carol Hatler, for decades, you pushed us, inspired us, made us better, made us stronger. So thank you. And on the edge here, guess what it says? Edge. You like that? Then on the back, it says here, I hope you had a nice summer because it's over. I've had a lot of help here. Ben Cooper, where are you? And Candace. And my wife, Tracy. Thank you so much for the help on pulling this together. And we got this here. If you want to come sign it, you can. But we got a picture here that I think is just iconic. It's downtown Gilbert. It's the Gilbert Days Parade. It's just really cool. And we're going to put a picture here. We're going to attempt tonight to take a picture of everybody who came and try to put it in. We're going to see how that goes. It's getting a little scary. But we do have a little plaque down here on the bottom. In case you haven't seen it already, it says Phil and Carol Hatler, Superior with Distinction. I'll just share a quick little memory, and then we'll open it up to whoever else might want to do it. We probably can't go too long doing that tonight, but yeah, I came over from Mesa. In 9th grade, I was in the Mesa program, and I came over. I'd been marching with a baritone saxophone in Mesa, and so I didn't have a good attitude about marching band. So I came over and I tried to talk myself into being in the jazz band without having to be in the marching band. So I went over to negotiate with the director, and you don't negotiate with Mr. Hatler. So I ended up in the marching band against my will, and it turned out to be one of those phenomenal experiences. The other amazing memory I have is we were at ASU Band Day, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden one of these bands, they kind of turn around, and that big huge wall of sound hits you, and the chills go up your spine, and all of a sudden, I get it. That's what we're here for. And then, even more so, the same thing when I'm out there on the field myself, and that same thing happens, and everything just clicks. And you all remember it because you're there. You know what it's like when the electricity catches, and it just feels amazing. So thank you to you two for all the work that you've done all these years in making such an incredible experience for us. You're heroes in this town. So we miss you. Now, you have a little help. So where's Bill Bitter and Rita Scholz? And there's a lot of other music teachers. Everybody raise your hand over there. A lot of help here. Put Bill Bitter's hand. So that's a legacy that we have in Gilbert that means everything to us. And it's you guys who came and built us. So thank you very much. Now, if there's somebody else who'd like to come up and say something, you're welcome to do it. And then you guys be thinking, if you got something to say, you're welcome to do it. So just going to be thinking that through a little bit. Anybody?
Drummers!
Yeah, go right there. Go on the microphone.
Yeah, she dragged me. Well, she dragged me all over anyway. So should you say my piece first?
Hi, Mr. I don't know if you remember me or not. I was only in band for 1 year, and right on that field, literally on the field is where I met my husband. I was a drummer, and I was in the color guard rifle. And that year, towards the end of the season, marching season, I ended up pregnant with our first child. We have 3 children now.
Don't know how it happened.
And I don't know if Mrs. Hatler remembers or not. I don't know if Mrs. Hatler remembers. But that was the first year. It was the first year that Gilbert won state, and we were at the competition. The week before, Mrs. Hatler changed our routine at the end for the rifles. And being pregnant, I think I was just like maybe a month or a few weeks or something. And I don't think, obviously she didn't know it. She wouldn't have let me march probably. But I completely went through the whole thing, and at the end did the old routine. At the very end, I was the only one that did that. Forgot that they had changed it the week before, and we were supposed to practice all. My hands couldn't work, or it was just, pregnancy brain. And I would just remember coming up to her, I'm like, I did the wrong one. Did anybody see it? And she's like, yes. But thank you for that time that we had together, and for loving my life.
What year were you?
80, that was 81, 82.
81, 82 was when, I was 11th grade at the time.
Yeah.
So I went by I go by Lee now because it's shorter, but my name, I went by Leland back then. So that's and I probably shouldn't have reminded you I need to apologize for all this stuff. She's reminded me of it.
A one story.
Oh, now you're remembering, aren't you? I'm sorry. Best times of my life, but I'm sorry I did give a lot of problems to you. But the things you reminded me of that was such a big memory of ours. Do you remember Doug Hubert?
Tall.
Very tall man, yeah. He's the only person I knew in my band career that you ever kicked out. We were coming back from a football game, and you were driving the instrument bus behind us, and we were changing back there, and
He mooned Mr.
drunk
Hatler.
everything. And I was standing right beside him, and I went, oh,
He
my
turned
gosh.
around and mooned Mr. Hatler. That was it for him.
That was it for him.
I remember that.
No, I remember that, but 34 years together still.
It was the summer of 1979, and we had a gentleman from Tennessee come to town. And our roots are in people, not places. And so, as the superintendent, I worked during the summer, and I walked out the door. There were 3 portable buildings. We were uptown then. And it wasn't the athletes that were out on the field working. It was the band kids. And I knew instantaneously. Oh, thank you.
That can't go without saying that there's another hero in this town, and that's Wally. You cannot build a music program without people in administration that can support you the way he did, and we thank you very much for what you did.
Short and sweet. Great white. See if you remember this quote. Hey, Daddy, there goes our tire. Thank you for recruiting me into band my senior year. It meant the world to me. Thank you.
I met the love of my life also in band, so it must be, you know, before there was Match.com, we had my best memory from band is, you know, after the game and we were in the halftime show and then sitting in the stands and then we'd go and change in the bus and us girls would be changing under a blanket, and evidently my boyfriend at that time had absolutely no problem just changing in the aisle of the bus. But Mr. Hatler gets on the bus just as Jimmy's stripping down to his underwear. And those of you know, who marched with Jimmy, I dated him for 6 months before I called him anything but Jimmy Jane. Everybody called him Jimmy Jane. And finally, after about 6 months of dating, he said, you know, you can just call me Jimmy. Mr. Hatler gets on the bus and says, Jimmy Jane, get some clothes on.
My name's Bill Bitter.
Yeah.
I was blessed to be a beginning teacher for 12 years with this man, and he means the world to me. Everything I've ever had the opportunity to do is because you taught me how to do it. Thank you for that. So either the first year, I think it was our first year teaching, yes, because we had Stephen in February, and before the end of the year, you two invited us to dinner at your old apartment by Fiesta Mall. And good manners, what should we bring? And Phil said, well, just bring the appetites. So I went home and told my wife, we have to bring appetizers. We hadn't worked together very long, so I didn't understand him all the time.
There was a language barrier.
I learned to speak Southern. So we
Squeak.
Sheet jet. So we showed up at the Hatler's apartment with our tray of vegetables that Debbie had spent a lot of time cutting up and putting together, and it was beautiful. And Carol opens the door, looks at my wife, looks at the vegetables and goes, "What's that?" And I think, was that maybe one of the first few times you really ever really saw or got to know Carol. I think that was early in our relationship, but it was a wonderful 12 years teaching together. It's been a wonderful, it's just been amazing. Thank you so very much for everything.
Oh, goodness. My wife says you're going to fall, and this probably will. I'm probably one of, anybody graduated in 1981? Anybody who was here when Mr. Hatler started? So I was actually had the opportunity to be here when they came on board, and I can remember the memories and the opportunities of being able to work with them. We first had these old, ugly uniforms, and we marched with those for one day, and then I remember them come back and say, hey, you're all going to do something, and they gave us material to sew our first uniform shirts, if I recall, right? Said, this is our uniform for next year. Figure out how to do the pattern and make sure you're ready to march in them next year. And that's how we started the marching band. And I want to also give a couple other tributes that I think are really important. This past week, I serve on another committee, and I happened to run into Richard Riley, who was the principal. And we talked about this, and I mentioned that he was retiring. And he said what a great, one of the best decisions they weighed was hiring. And I think Dr. Bilecki had already talked about that. Because you changed the music program, not just in Gilbert, but in the whole valley. You brought that whole Tennessee marching style, the drum and bugle corps style, and the memories and experiences. I also remember you helped us do the Wranglers. Anybody, when you helped us do the Wranglers, you said, Dwayne, you need to come and march. I played saxophone, and I gave you a marching thing. I don't even, something that, baritone, I think. Said, you need to learn this, and we're going to march in the the Wranglers, which is a German bugle corps. I always wanted to be a band director because of Mr. Hatler. I went into that for a couple years as a music major, but I've never stopped being a band. And I want to challenge it. I want to just kind of show you the tribute of that. I'll bet every one of us have had kids that have continued in band or music something because of that. In fact, I just got back. I've got 3 boys that have been marching for 10 years. I've never graduated yet. I'm still in high school. I've chaperoned every marching band trip for 10 years. And we just got back on Monday from London, marching in the New Year's Day parade because of band. It's taken us all over the world, amazing experiences that has changed my life and my family. But I want you to look around. How many in this room have had kids now in music because of what we learned from them? I think that's probably the most important tribute, because music is something that will live on forever, and we need to continue to do that. Thank you.
Me? It went from uh-oh to oh.
Need a step stool?
No. I'm a jazz choir teacher. I can do this.
Not her.
Hi everybody, I'm Rita Scholz, and I was the last hired with the original team at Gilbert High School in 1982. I think, Bill, you came in 81, and I came in 82. And this was the town then when there was one light. I wouldn't call it necessarily a stoplight, but it was a light that was kind of strung on it was a wire on Elliott and Gilbert Road, and when the wind would blow, it kind of swayed. This was the town that Phil and Bill and I, we all taught junior high, half our day, because the programs were small, the town was small. And then we would have lunch together, perhaps the Betty Special at Gilbert Junior High, or on a rare occasion we would go to Jimmy's Dairy Bar, right? Because that was back in the days when you had a lunch, and we would actually drive around and go have lunch at Jimmy's Dairy Bar, because Liberty Market was a market. It wasn't a cool place to go eat. But those were the days when Bill and I were young teachers, and we had this fantastic mentor. And I'm sure that Bill would agree, and I certainly can say that I built the choir program. Bill built the orchestra program under your mentorship. And you were not only a friend and a great colleague, but you really showed us by action what we should do. And the entire Gilbert community owes a great thanks to you, and myself included. So thank you for your friendship and your guidance. And I ran into Phil at retreat in Prescott. He was up, even though he's retired, he was still helping, volunteering at a high school that was gone for the weekend. So my choir was up at retreat, and Phil was there. But the district all of a sudden the district exploded with growth. And Phil and Bill and I had all these kids in a new facility. We started teaching at the old Gilbert High School, and then we had a lovely input as to what the new Gilbert High School could be. And then of course it went on to be Highland and all the other schools, and the district exploded. But every time we see Phil still reminds us what a great thing, right, Bill? What a great thing we have going in Gilbert. So Carol and Bill, thank you so much for all that you've done. It's great to see Neil. That's fantastic. And we appreciate you and love you.
My turn. You'll be glad to know you weren't the only one that you swindled into playing. How many people did Phil swindle while you were in marching band? I came from Coronado in '88, so I had second half of the year, tenor sax player. Told him I was excited about marching band. I'm not putting saxes on the field next year. You need to learn tuba. Phil volunteered me for a lot of stuff. It was one of the concerts towards the end of the year. I think it was my senior year. Me and Greg, he looked at us both and said, it was like the day before the concert, you're like, go down to Rita's room, you're playing in the concert tomorrow night with the choir. Sorry. Okay. You're a great mentor. I appreciate everything you did.
I'm a reformed politician, so it's hard to see a microphone and not take a minute with it. I served on the town council for about 5 years here in Gilbert and loved every minute of it. And I know we want to get to the main event, which is to hear from the Hatlers, but I couldn't let this moment go by without thinking through all these memories that have come through. And I also got switched. I was a trumpet player, but not a very good trumpet player. And it wasn't very long that Mr. Hatler encouraged me to try the baritone horn. And I actually did okay on that, and I appreciated that change. But I wasn't always probably the best behaved or best example that I could be. And so I remember this wonderful junior year when Neil and all the trombones and others had these great solos out on the field, and we were just biding our time, wondering what was going to be for our senior year. And so summer came along, and I got a call in the middle of the summer from Mr. Hatler, and a couple of my friends did as well. And invited us down to the trailers that were over here before the band room was finished, and showed us this video of a college band somewhere. And it was elements of the program that he was planning on using for the next year. And it was a marvelous program. It was exciting. It was the brass instruments, as usual, we're going to get to shine, right? And there was going to be solos and great opportunities for us. And then he said, it's going to be a great year, and we'd love for you to be part of it, but we need you to change your ways a little bit. And we called it the Better Off Without You speech. So yes, we went home and we thought about it. We thought maybe we wouldn't be so better off if we were without the band, even if the band might be better off without us. And what I loved about that moment and how it relates to tonight is, and by the way, I use that with my kids all the time. Kids, this is what you can have, but if you don't behave, we're better off without you. Really tying it together with tonight is you showed us a great grand vision of what things could be. And now, when I think about what things could be and what they can be, you had the vision. You showed it to us. We bought it. We loved it. It became part of us, and it continues to be part of us. That vision lives on with us. It lives on with my kids, even though they're string players. Stay a little bit longer, Bill. Got one coming your way next year. But it lives on, and so you saw the vision. You saw what it could make us. And we now see that better than we ever did then, and we see what it can make our kids, and we really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much for all of that.
I'm Evan Thompson, class of '98. I'm going to try and not run long. I have been known to ramble. This is Timothy, one of Mr. Hatler's many band grandchildren. There's another legacy Mr. Hatler has, and that is this. I know there's at least 3 of us in this room. If you are a music teacher who had Mr. Hatler as a teacher, raise your hand. I majored in history. I became a history teacher, and shortly after I graduated from college, my dad passed away, and Mr. Hatler was at the service, which speaks volumes of that in and of itself. I called him to tell Dad had passed, and he already knew. because you write it in the paper. But anyway, I kind of ducked my head in shame when I told them I was teaching history and not band. And then I taught history for 3 years, and then an opportunity came up, and I took the test and passed it first time to become a band director, and that was largely because of Mr. Hatler and Mr. Edgar. And so then I became a band director, and I called him, and he said, Evan, I was expecting this phone call one of these days. And that was great. So, thank you, Mr. Hatler, for everything you've done. You've been amazing. I got to teach at Paradise Valley High School for 1 year, where his school fed mine. That was really fun. So, Mr. Hatler, you're awesome. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dan Hubbard, and I graduated in '93. And I just wanted to thank Bill and Carol. From the bottom of my heart, I was a new kid at Gilbert High, and my brother was with me, and we were both in the band and very active, and we marched in the Rose Bowl and Fiesta Bowl. And it's hard to be a new kid, but Bob and I were very passionate about music, and Phil and Carol and Bill and Mr. Bennett, all Mark, I guess. I don't know if I guess I can call him that now, but yeah, like I really liked music. I loved music, and it was so great to not have my love of music be hurt. It was actually helped, but to not be hurt coming from Massachusetts for the last 2 years of high school is why I ended up being a music major and being a music teacher and having independent record deals and doing way more in music than I probably should do for sanity's sake, like writing symphonies and stuff. But I needed it, and we need people like Phil Hatler and the team that are serious about music, because all our lives we've heard that you can be a poor musician if you major in music. It's all a lie. It's important. And some people are really interested in music, and that's their thing. And so when music becomes serious by some mentors, when it's serious for them, then it's such a comforting feeling, because there's so much of the world that is not serious about music. And we could get into religion or any of a bunch of things that don't apply to everyone in this room. But music does apply to everyone in this room, because we're all here for Phil. And it can change lives. And it's just as big as anything in this world, and it's not completely out of this world. And we come together tonight, and this is a perfect example of just how love and music and seriousness about the arts, it just grows out of control, and it's contagious, and I'm really thankful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to cry. So back in 1982, my best friend, Mike Lopez, gave me a call and said, "You want to come and play cymbals?" Sure, why not? Came out and did the cymbal thing. Stayed in the band all through high school. Stuck around after high school, taught drumline for 10 years with Mr. Hatler. Went on, became the band director here until 2008, now in a different district. 33 years later, best thing I ever did. Thank you very much. My second dad, I love you so much. Appreciate everything that you've done for me. Couldn't ask for a better person to be a mentor. So thank you.
I think we got time for one, maybe two more. How's that?
I have to remove the gum from my mouth. I'm not grown up. So, 1986. I have Ann Cabano, aka Ann Holden. So I have this story, and it's about the last time that I saw the two of you. And it was approximately 2 years after high school. And I was a young, very low self-esteem, low value individual when I was younger. And so I was terrified of the both of you because I had huge respect for you. And probably because I was dating your son and that was a lot of pressure. So, the last time I saw you, you came up to me authentically. You ran up to me and you said, "Ann, how are you doing?" And it was probably the most horrific moment of my life because I replied, "I'm just hanging." That was my reply to everything that I've done in the world. But I have to tell you that it made a huge impact on me personally because you were such wonderful mentors. Even if you don't know the lives that you touch, you were. And like this moment right now, I stand here and I think, oh, if you asked me what I was doing now, man, I've got some really interesting answers. Because I feel this, for me, you exemplified what passion made manifest looks like. And you exemplified what it was to be respectable and to be a leader. And that moment changed my life when I answered you that way. And it really stayed with me throughout my life. And I think I became an overachiever now. So thank you very much.
Phil's in trouble now.
Hi, I'm Lisa Nothnagel, elementary band teacher.
Laura Soapland, retired.
Retired.
And I'm Laura Tomrin.
And I just want to thank Phil because we know what he's done at the high school, but we, as elementary teachers, Laura taught elementary her past few years before she retired. What you need to know is like from the 80s and 90s, he had a major voice in the entire music program. And he came up with his schedule, a 6-day block schedule. And if you could see the elementary numbers that just, from the 80s and 90s, and we taught all through that, and how band just took off, went to the junior high when Laura was at Gilbert and Greenfield Junior High, and he had a major voice in building that whole program, and we can't be more thankful to you as we are now old teachers still doing the job, still plugging away. And we fought the good fight a few years ago. As you know, there was a major change, and we are still doing the job. It's going well. We're kind of hurt by the decision, but it's still going along. We're still getting kids playing. But we can't thank you enough, for all you did for the entire town of Gilbert, for the entire music program, not just high school. You saw the entire program built up, and we are very indebted to you. Your name comes up a lot. I know when I have to voice my opinion and fight for things, we bring up those good old days and what was brought up. So thank you. And it was a pleasure working with you at Gilbert High. We have a lot of funny stories we could probably share, but we might save those. But one of our biggest lines is, "Het me."
And I just want to say thanks for taking a chance on us, because we were hired in Gilbert because of you, and we were young teachers, and so thank you.
You're welcome.
When we were hired, I'll just be very quick. When we were hired, I was hired kind of to be an assistant at a junior high plus some elementaries. Lisa was hired right after me. Laura took maternity leave, and they had a sub. Do you remember this, Mr. Hatler?
The band from hell,
The
Gilbert Junior High.
band from hell. We
That guy.
affectionately not really called it. And so, and all the 7th graders at Gilbert Junior were in one band, 117 kids every day in one band. And the sub couldn't handle it, so Phil brought Lisa over from where she was and me over from where I was, and we team taught together. And you were there. Do you remember this now? You still don't remember this, do you? I just remember that you
got him in shape.
He got him in shape, and then he'd sit in the back of the room and read the paper. While Lisa and I rehearsed, Phil would be back there with the paper.
Good job.
Yep, just to make sure that we had a handle on it, and then he finally left us alone. But that was a great thing, because through all that experience, we became best of friends, and we've been best of friends for over 25 years. So,
Thank you so much.
I want to say something real quick here. I was a band director to your neighbors to the west of here, okay, for very many years. And I attribute the success of the Chandler Band and Orchestra program to Phil and to Bill Bitter and the choir program too, to Rita. Because of your example, we followed along and put in the block program in Chandler, and our numbers just mushroomed. And it was really due to you guys doing it here, being successful here with it. And say thank you for that, because it really meant a lot to our program too, over there.
Thanks, Bill.
Is there anybody else who's just got to come up?